The topic of the shir for tonight is Ba'omer or La-Omer. What's the difference? This may seem to be a trivial topic, but it actually, as the further we get into it, we'll discover that it actually gets into the very crux of what the mitzvah of Sfiras Omer is all about, at least according to the way some of the Meforshim understand. If you open up your Art Scroll Siddur, you'll notice that even in the Nusach Ashkenaz Siddur, they say Hayom, let's say Shiva Yamim, when it was 7 days of the Omer, Shehem Shavua Echad La Omer, and then on the bottom it says, some say Ba Omer, right?
In the Hebrew
one it says Ba Omer. Okay, good. So it's it's a steer in the Art Scroll Siddur, right? From the Hebrew to the Hebrew English, and the truth is that both minhagim are equally valid. There's a misconception that one is Nusach Ashkenaz and one is Nusach Sfard. That's really not the case. It is a machlokas of the Achronim. The Gra holds that it should be Ba-Omer. The Arizal holds that it should be La-Omer. So therefore, normally we would assume that people who are more mystical based, like by Hasidim and by Sfardim, they would go like the Ari and say La-Omer. And people who are more based on the Vilna Gaon, on linguistics and non-mystical would go Ba-Omer, but it doesn't always work out that way. Yekes also say La-Omer. So we have to try and figure out what the basis of this machlokas is. We're going to trace a couple of different ideas, and hopefully they will, initially they may seem to be disparate, and then we're going to try and bring them all together. First, let's look at the standard halacha that's brought in Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch in Orach Chaim Simin Taf Pei Tes in Sif Aleph says, and we're just coming in the middle of this Sif, V'sofer hayomim v'hashavuas, that the mitzvah of counting Sfiras Omer is that you have to count both the days and the weeks. So, and that's what we do. We say Hayom, let's say Tisha Yamim, Shehem Shavua Echad, Ushnei Yamim Ba'omer. So we say that today is 9, which is 1 week and 2 days. Right, so we're counting both individual days, which is 9, and then we're letting us know how many weeks and how many fractions of a week it is, like 1 week and how many days. So, case of Yom Rishon Omer Hayom Yom Echad. Now look at this, isn't that interesting? In parentheses, the Mechaber has the word Ba'omer. Now the question is, who put those parentheses in? That's a little bit of a mystery. We're not really sure whether that was the publisher's decision, the printer's decision, whether that was the Mechaber himself who put the Sograyim, who put the parentheses there, whether the Mechaber never had the word Ba'omer in there in the first place, and someone else put it in after him. We're not really sure. Okay? Ad shemagi l'shiva yamim va'az yomer hayom shiva yamim shehem shavua echad Ba'omer, and once again we have that word Ba'omer put in parentheses. Uviyom shmini yomar hayom shmona yamim shem shavua echad v'yom echad Ba'omer. Again, the word Ba'omer is in parentheses. Again, a bit of a mystery why that's in parentheses. V'chein ad sheyagi l'arbar asar, and then when you get to 14, you say Hayom arba asar yamim shehem shnei shavuos Ba'omer. Once again, the word Ba'omer is in parentheses. Quite an interesting little phenomenon that you find in Shulchan Aruch, where you have 4 times the word Ba'omer is written in parentheses in this Sif. And you do the same pattern of counting for all 49 days. Okay? Comes along the Taz and explains whether we should say Ba'omer and La-Omer. And the question what you might assume, is that the reason why it's in parentheses is because maybe the Mechaber had originally written the word Ba'omer, and someone was unhappy and felt that it should really be La-Omer, and so they put the whole word in parentheses. Or it could be that the Mechaber had originally written La-Omer and someone decided to change it and put in Ba'omer. Or who knows, we're not really sure. But let's see what the Taz's girsa is. His girsa in the Mechaber is clearly that he had the word Ba'omer in the Mechaber. And he writes, Hayom Yom Echad Ba'omer, Kain Minhageinu. Our minhag is to add the word Ba'omer with the letter Beis. Aval B'divrei Haran Sof Pesachim, Shehevi Beis Yosef. But the Ran, one of the Rishonim, of course, that is brought by the Beis Yosef, Nizkar Sham La Omer Bilamid. He writes La Omer. Now, for those grammarians, linguists among us, what is the difference between saying something is be and something is le? Anyone tell me? In and to. They're both prepositions, yes? And ba is in or of, and la could sometimes be towards or also of. Can anyone bring me a raya that it should be ba Omer, by the way? Just a simple proof?
Yes, Lag BaOmer.
Lag BaOmer. Very good, Simi. We don't say Lag LaOmer. We're not going to celebrate Lag LaOmer. We're not going to light bonfires on Lag LaOmer. We're going to light bonfires on Lag BaOmer. So that would be a simple proof that the girsa that we have in front of us is correct. However, we will see. He says, "Aval b'divrei haran sof pesachim shemei b'beis nizkar shem LaOmer b'lamid v'nira yoser nachon minhagim." But the Taz says, I would like to argue that our minhag of saying ba Omer is more correct than saying la Omer. Daha biyom echad shemaninan b'tchilat leil yudvav. He says, let me prove it to you. The night of the 16th, which is the very first day that we start counting Sphira. Yes? So he says, Habi perush b'minyan yemei ha'omer asher yavi'u lemachar b'yom yudvav. You can't say that the word la Omer, the word Omer now, let's forget about the preposition for a second. When we say that we're counting Sfirat HaOmer, what does the word Omer mean? It has one of two translations. It either means the carbon, that this is the counting from the bringing of the carbon HaOmer, or it could mean that the word Omer is a period of time of 49 days, called the Omer period. We say, oh, it's during Sphira, so I don't shave during Sphira, right? But you could also say, I don't shave during the Omer. So the word Omer is not referring to a carbon per se, it's referring to a period of time called the Yemei HaOmer. So the Taz wants to prove that when we say Hayom Yom Echad BaOmer, we're not saying today is the first day from the count from the bringing of the carbon HaOmer, because if that were the case, then how could we count the first night? Tonight is the first day from the counting from the bringing of the Omer when we haven't brought the carbon HaOmer yet. So you therefore must conclude that the word Omer in this formula is not a reference to the carbon HaOmer, but it's a reference to the days of the Omer. And therefore the word Ba, which means within, is more accurate because we're describing a counting which is within the days of the Omer. In contradistinction, if it was La Omer, then it would be a counting to or for, because the word La could also mean for the carbon of the Omer. In which case, we wouldn't be able to say the word La Omer the first night. We would only be able to say La Omer on subsequent evenings. So therefore, the Taz's argument is, he says, you must conclude that the formula that we say the first night of counting must be referring to the word Omer in that formula, must be referring to the days of the Omer. Asher yaviu lemachar b'yom yudvav. He says, and we're going to be bringing the carbon ha'omer the following day. Uv'yamim achirim havigam ken shapir de'aminyan yomei de'omer ka'eh. And therefore it makes sense to say that on all other subsequent days of counting, we are making reference, when we say the word Omer, to the days of Omer in which we count. He says, if you were going to say La Omer, it would imply that you're referring to the carbon HaOmer, for the counting for the carbon HaOmer, which is yet to take place. But the word Ba-Omer means that the word Omer is a reference to the days of the Omer. As Simi said, the word Bet is within. And therefore you can't say that Ba-Omer is a reference to the carbon Omer, because we're not counting inside the carbon. We're counting inside the days, this time period. You count within a time period, you don't count within a physical object which is brought on the Mizbeach. Okay? However, if you say La Omer, then it would be to the bringing of the carbon of the Omer, which has yet to take place the first night, and therefore it's not an appropriate terminology. Kein nira la'aniyas daiti. This, says the Taz, is what my opinion would be.
So he's saying that if you're saying Omer, you would almost do the opposite. You would say, like, it's now 40 days to the Omer. You count, 49 the first night, and it's 49 days to the Omer. La Omer, so it's time between the carbon.
No, La Omer would mean it's 40 days for the bringing of the Omer. In other words, since I brought the carbon HaOmer, it's been 40 days. That's what the word La, the letter La.
Intuitively, you almost would think that you would count the opposite.
You do a countdown.
Right, countdown.
Right. Although no, the carbon HaOmer is brought on the first day. So therefore, when you say La Omer, you're basically saying it's 40 days from the day that I brought the carbon HaOmer. So even though there's an argument to say that it should be a countdown because we're anticipating Shavuos, but the inclusion of the word La Omer would be a count from the bringing of the carbon. And the Taz therefore says that it doesn't make sense to say that the first night. The fact that we add the word Omer the first night means that we're not referring to the carbon HaOmer, we're referring to the days of the Omer, and therefore the letter Beis is the correct preposition. All right, everyone with me? Okay, great. Shari Tshuva, which you can look at on your own time, basically says there's no compelling argument, even though he brings from a Shilas Tshuvas Beis Yaakov, who wants to also argue that from a number of different sources that Beis is more correct. But the Shari Tshuva says really ein hechreya. There's really no proof that you're bringing from these sources that you want to bring. But he says, Lashon b'nei adam nofel yoter la'omer b'lamid b'chein nog b'medina sein. He says it makes more sense to say la'omer. That's the way people speak. Letzeis b'nei Yisrael. Right? It was so such and such days and years from the time that the Jewish people left Egypt. There's a lamed. There's a number of arguments from a linguistic point of view. That's when they left. Litzeis, when we're talking about a chronology, a date, Litzeis b'nei Yisrael, that from the time that the Jewish people left Israel, right? That's so lamed makes more sense if we're counting from a specific time period. And therefore, v'cheinog b'medina seinu, and that's what we do in our environs, v'hual pi ha'arizal, and it's based on the Ari. And as I mentioned to you, it's really a machlokus. The Gra says Ba Omer, the Arizal says La Omer. Mishnah Berurah says Ba Omer, Uverov Poskim Hanusach La Omer. Mishnah Berurah just says in source number 4 that most poskim say La Omer, Mihu Iker Davar Zeh Eno Elo Lechatchila, Kedei Leva'er Shehu Moneh Miyom Shehikrivu Esa Omer. You see very clearly that the Mishnah Berurah understands that the word Omer is a reference to the carbon, and it's such and such days from the time that we brought the carbon Omer. What does he do with the Taz's Kasha? I guess what he would say is that so there's a low plug. In other words, even though it doesn't really fit in so well the first night of counting, you'd have to say that we count the first night La Omer, even though the language doesn't fit in because of all the other 48 nights where the language fits in so much better. Okay? And therefore, he says, but it's really not ma'akiv, it's only lechatchila, because the imlo amar ela hayom kach v'kach nami yatsa. And therefore, even if you didn't say the word Omer at all, you would still be yotze. So you still yotze the mitzvah. In other words, let's say you just say hayom tisha yamim shehem shavua echad u'shnei yamim, and you stop there. You're also yotze. The word Omer is just for purposes of clarification where this count began. But if you didn't say the word Omer, Ba Omer, La Omer, you didn't say anything at all, you're still going to be Yotze. Where does the Mishnah Berurah get this from? It's really the Torah. The Torah in source number 5 says, quite explicitly, he didn't even have the girsa of Ba Omer or La Omer at all. He didn't have that word at all in his nusach of counting. In source number 5, he says, V'sofer hayomim v'hashavuos, that you count days and weeks. Ketza b'yom harishon omed u'mevarich al sfiras ha'omer hayom yom echad. And on the first day you say, today is day 1. Ad shemagia l'shiva yamim, va'az yomer hayom shiva yamim shehem shavua echad. And on the 7th day you say, today is 7 days, which is 1 week. not 1 week to the Omer, 1 week in the Omer, right? Uviyom Shmona Yomer Hayom Shmona Yomim Shem Shavucha B'Yom Echad. On day 8, you say today is 8 days, which is 1 week and 1 day. No Ba'omer, no La'omer at all in the Torah. The Rashba was the first to argue that it's not a good thing to say La'omer, to clarify that you're counting from a certain starting point. However, it's clearly, even in the Rashba, who is the advocate of adding the word Omer, is certainly not Ma'akeh. The Lavush in source number 6, again in Siman Tov Pei Tes, he says, Ve'ein hefresh, bein sheyomer hayom kach v'kach yom la'omer, o sheyomer hayom kach v'kach yomim below la'omer. Makes no difference whether you add the word Omer or not in the formula. Avol yoter ra'ui lomar la'omer kedei lava'er yoter. He's quoting the Rashba. It's preferable to add the word la'omer because you're actually clarifying what your starting point is. Now, take a look at this last point of the Rashba, of the Lavush rather. You might think that this is not related to our discussion, but it actually is very relevant to what we're going to see shortly. Ve'achar habracha. After you make the bracha and after you count, Yomar Yehi Ratzon Sheyibana Beis HaMikdash. You're supposed to say another one-line formula. May be your will Hashem Sheyibana Beis HaMikdash B'meira B'yameinu, that the temple be built speedily in our days. Now, what's the nusach that we have? May the merciful one return or restore the temple service speedily in our days. Amen. It's the same basic idea, that you say a little prayer at the end of Sfiras HaOmer to ask Hashem to bring us back to the temple service. Now, why do we do that? So the Lavush says, "V'hatam lefisha bizman hazeh haSfira hu midirabanan." He says because nowadays Sfiras HaOmer is only a mitzvah derabanan. Why? Even though the Torah says in Parshas Emor, "V'safartolacha," you shall count for yourself Sheva Shabbasos Shanim, Sheva Shanim Sheva Pe'amim. You have to count 7 weeks, 49 days. He says, Kevin she'en lanu makom lahakri ha'omer, lakach mispalalim yehi ratzon sheyibona beis hamikdash b'mheira u'nekayim hamitzvah ketikuna. We therefore daven to Hashem after Sfira that even though now we're only counting from a rabbinical standpoint, we hope that one day we'll be able to do the mitzvah ketikuna, the mitzvah according to the Torah's standards, which is that it's counting from the bringing of the korban ha'omer. Now, this is where we're going to get into the machlokas rishonim, whether Sfiras HaOmer Bizman Hazeh is the Oraisa or the Rabbanan. Now, should that make a difference whether it's Ba'omer or La'omer? That's what we're going to see tonight. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I just want to show you the basic vanilla machlokas between the Rambam and the Balei HaTosfos and the Rosh. Machlokas basically between the Rambam and Tosfos, or the Rambam and the Ran on one side, Tosfos and the Rosh on the other side, whether it's a D'oraisa or D'Rabbanan Bizman Hazeh when you cannot bring a korban ha'omer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at 2 other Rishonim very briefly and show you that even there could be even a third and perhaps even a fourth opinion as to what the mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer Bizman Hazeh is. And then we'll see and we'll bring it back to how this affects the nusach of how we count Sfira. Okay, so let's take a look first at very, very quickly. The Rambam in source number 7, in Hilchos Tamidim U'Musafim Perek Zayin, Halacha Chaf Dalid, first in Halacha Chaf Beis, he talks about the mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer, what you're supposed to count. He says, first of all, he says it's a mitzvah aseh, in Halacha Chaf Beis, Lispor Sheva Shabbosos Timimos. You're supposed, there's a mitzvah to count 7 complete weeks, Miyom Havoas HaOmer, from the time of the bringing of the korban homer. But then in Halacha Chaf Daled he says, Mitzvah zu al kol ish Yisrael uvechol makom uvechol zeman. This mitzvah is incumbent upon every Jewish man, anywhere he is, even outside of Israel, uvechol zeman, and in all times, not just during temple times. So the Rambam clearly holds that this is a mitzvah saseh deoraisa, even Bizman Hazeh. The only thing he has is that Nashim Avodim Peturim Mimena, that women and indentured servants are exempt from this mitzvah because it's a mitzvah to aseh, Shazman Grama, as we all know. Okay? Comes along Tosfos, and the Rosh says the same thing as well. Tosfos in Maseches Menachos, Daf Samech Vav Amud Aleph, and he says that the counting of Sfira Zeichel HaMikdash, that it's a reminder of what we did in temple times, and he therefore, Tosfos says, Nira de B'Safik Chashecha Yochel Levarech, that it would seem that when there's a doubt, if it's not, you're not sure whether it's night yet, you're not sure whether you can count Sfira or not, that you can still make a bracha of Al Sfira Sa'omer. Why? Because Ve'ein Tzarach Lahamtin Ad Shehei Vadai Laila Kevin Shu Sveika D'Rabbanan. Because Sfira Sa'omer Bisman Hazeh is only a rabbinic law, and Safek D'Rabbanan Lakula. Since it's a Safek D'Rabbanan, you can count already even if it's Safek Laila. Okay? So you clearly see Machlokas Rishonim right off the bat. We don't have to go any further, right? Machlokas Rishonim, Rambam holds it says mitzvah deoraisa filu bizman hazeh, and therefore it would make sense to say that according to the Rambam, if you're dealing with the mitzvah saseh deoraisa, Safek deoraisa is l'chumra, so you'd have to wait until it's vadai laila in order to count. But according to Balei HaTosfos, you don't have to wait till it's vadai laila. You can count even if it's only ben hashmashas, because Safek derabbanan l'kula. So if we stop there, that's the standard machlokas. You may have even heard of this before. Machlokas Rishonim, whether it's Sfira Sa'omer is deraisa or derabbanan bizman hazeh. But I want to go a little bit further, and for this I want to take a look at Rabbeinu Yerucham ben Meshulam, who was originally a French Rishon, but then he moved to Toledo and learned under the Rosh for many years. He lived in the first part of the 14th century, and that's where he wrote most of his Sfarim. This is from the Sefer of Rabbeinu Yerucham Toldos Adam V'Chava, which is where he goes into a number of different halachic issues pertaining to a person's conduct after marriage. And we'll spend a little bit extra time on this particular Rishon, because it is unique in the sense that it's not clearly a deoraisa and not clearly derabbanan. It's a little bit in between a deoraisa and derabbanan. Let's take a look at what Rabbeinu Yerucham says. He says, Leil Sheni, this is source number 9. He says, Leil Sheni shel Pesach mevorachem asher kiddishanu b'mitzvosav etzivanu al Sfira Sa'omer. He says, the second night of Pesach, you make the bracha of al Sfira Sa'omer. V'tamahi, he says, it's a little bit problematic. He says, Shahayil olomer al Sefirat hayamim. He says, why do we say Sfirat HaOmer? You're not counting the Omer sacrifice. You're counting days. So why do we call it Sfirat HaOmer? Ki Sfirat HaOmer eino shum davar. He says that's a meaningless statement. You're not counting the Omer sacrifice. V'havale loymar al Sefira la Omer o al Sefirat Hayamim. And therefore the correct nusach of the bracha should have been Asher Kiddishana b'mitzvotav etzivan al Sefira la Omer, or al Sefirat Hayamim. That grammatically that would have made more sense. That's question number 1. Question number 2 asks Rabbeinu Yerucham, Va'od lama ein mevarchim bet brachot, echad liyamim ve'echad l'shvuot. Why don't we make 2 brachos? There are actually 2 mitzvahs every time we count Sfira. There's the mitzvah of counting Yamim and Shavuos. If you recall, I didn't copy the pasuk for you, but if you look at the pasuk in Parshas Omer that we learned over Pesach, it says B'sof hartalecha Sheva Shabbatot Uspartem lachem mimocharat haShabbat miyom haviachem et Omer haTenufa Sheva Shabbatot mimot tiyena Ad mimocharat hashana hashvit tisperu chamishim yom. It says, I was quoting from Parshas Bahar, but in Parshas Omer it says Uspartem lachem mimocharas haShabbos, that you shall start counting for yourselves from the day after Shabbos, which is the day after Pesach. Sheva, you should start count 7. Uspartem lachem mimocharas haShabbos miyom haviachem es Omer haTenufa Sheva Shabbosos timimos tiyena. That you shall count for yourself 7 weeks. And it says also Shiva Shavuot Tisparlach. It also says elsewhere, count for yourself 7 weeks. And then it says, Tisperu Chamishim Yom, it says count 50 days. So the question that Rabbeinu Yerucham is asking is that we have 2 separate mitzvahs in the Torah. Shiva Shavuot Tispar Lach, count for yourself 7 weeks, and also count for yourself 50 days, which is really just a round off of 49 days. So we should make 2 brachas, one for counting weeks and one for counting days. Sharei bet mitzvotein, vein kitfilin shel rosh v'shel yad. And therefore it's no different from the brachas that you make on the tefillin shel rosh and the tefillin shel yad. You make a bracha of asher kedushan v'mitzvos of lahaniach tefillin on your shel yad, and you make a separate bracha on the shel rosh. So if I have 2 mitzvahs, week, 7 weeks, and 49 days, I should make 2 brachos. Domer beis brachos afil also va'od. And furthermore, that's question number 2. Question number 3. Eichanu somchen hayom yudal yom shehem beis shavuos. Why do we put the 2 adjacent to each other? We say today is 14 days, which is 2 weeks. Or we say v'hayom chafalaf yom shem shlosha shavuos. Or we say today is 21 days, which is 3 weeks. V'hayalanu lomar, what we should have said is hayom yudal yom v'hayom beit shavuot. If it's 2 separate countings, we should say today is 14 days and today is 2 weeks. It's 2 separate mitzvahs. Avamalanu lomar shehem bet shavuot. So what are we going to say? That it's 2 weeks. V'cheinanu yodim sheyudal yom hem bet shavuot. He says, why are you just saying today is 14 days, which is 2 weeks? Are you just trying to do the math and clarify? Obviously, the reason why you're saying today is 14 days, which is 2 weeks, is because you have a mitzvah to count weeks. So it's therefore a separate mitzvah. So why don't you delineate that it's 2 separate mitzvahs that you're performing? From the power of these questions, the Rabbeinu Yerucham states as follows. He says, V'nira lan mishum dechasiv shiva shavuos tispar lach. He says, it says in the Torah, count for yourself 7 weeks. So chasiv nami miyom haviyachem es omer hatanufa sheva shabbatot mimot tihiyena. It also says, from the day that you bring the korban ha'omer, you shall count 7 complete weeks. Nimsa shelo nichtava sefira shavuos ki'im gabe ha'omer. Huge chiddush of Rabbeinu Yerucham. The whole mitzvah of counting weeks is related to the bringing of the korban ha'omer. However, avol sfiras hayomim lo ksiv gabe omer. But the mitzvah of counting days is not at all scripturally related to the bringing of the korban ha'omer. Nimsa disfiras hayomim umin haTorah afilu bisman hazeh usfiras hashavuos bisman diika omer. So he says there's two mitzvahs deoraisa. One is the mitzvah of counting weeks, which is linked scripturally to the bringing of the korban ha'omer. And in the absence of the korban ha'omer, there is no mitzvah deoraisa to count weeks, only a mitzvah derabbanan. But the mitzvah of counting days is not linked scripturally to the bringing of the korban ha'omer, and therefore even bisman hazeh there's a mitzvah deoraisa of counting days. So when I'm counting sfira bisman hazeh, I'm doing 2 mitzvahs, one deoraisa and one derabbanan. I'm doing the mitzvah deoraisa of counting days, and I'm doing the mitzvah of derabbanan of counting weeks. Are you with me, this Rabbeinu Yerucham? You got it so far? So let's go a little bit further. Nimsa disfiras hayamim min haTorah afilu bisman hazeh u'speshvus bisman diika omer v'hayu mevarchim al zeh bisman shabis hamikdash kayim. He says, and therefore they used to count them together when the temple was standing. And there's making them tolui one to the other. V'hainu dichsiv ad mimocharas hashavos hashavis tisperu chamishim yom v'havle lemichtav ad mocharas. We won't go through all of the diktuk in the way that the Rabbeinu Yerucham writes it, and.
How did he answer his question?
So basically, to answer all of his questions, so let's go back to the questions of Rabbeinu Yerucham. So he says, why don't we say Sfirat Hayamim? Because really the Sfira that we're doing is related to the Korban HaOmer. It's really related to the sphira that we did when we brought the Korban HaOmer. That's what he's saying Sfirat HaOmer is. Al Sfirat HaOmer means the sphira that we did at the time when we brought the Korban HaOmer, which was Hayom Shiva Yamim Shehem Shavua Echad. Whereas when we did it together, we're counting now in the way that we used to count when the Beis HaMikdash was standing, when there was both sections of the mitzvah were a mitzvah d'oraisa, even though today we only do one of them, which is Zeichel HaMikdash, and the other one we do mid'oraisa. And as far as his other, why don't we make two separate brachos, one for Yomim and one for Shavuos? It's very simple. We don't make a bracha on a Zeichel HaMikdash. We only make a bracha on a mitzvah d'oraisa or on a rabbinically instituted halacha. But if it's only Zeichel HaMikdash, says Rabbeinu Yerucham, you don't make a separate bracha. Like, for example, by the mitzvah of Korech that we did at the Seder, Zeichel HaMikdash Kehillah. Do we make a separate bracha on the mitzvah of Korech? No. It's only Zeichel HaMikdash. So when we count Sphira, part of what we're doing is a mitzvah d'oraisa, and part of what we're doing is Zeichel HaMikdash. So we signify that it's Zeichel HaMikdash in the format of the bracha, but the bracha be'etzim is going on the mitzvah d'oraisa. Yes?
I never understood this Rabbeinu Yerucham from several reasons.
Okay, you'll have to wait. You'll ask me later. Let me get through this year. But you probably have a lot of questions, but I'll take several reasons I don't have time for. If you have one question, I'll take it.
One question.
Okay.
One question.
Okay.
בפסוק 7 שבועות לספור לך, לספור לך מאחל חרמש בקמה. The pasuk it's mentioned in Sefer Dvarim, not mentioned at all the Korban HaOmer. And the days, Yamim, mentioned with the Korban. So I don't understand how we put these two together. It's supposed to be the opposite way around.
Okay.
The day is supposed to be...
It's a good question. It's a good question.
And the Shavuot is supposed to be the Oraita.
How Rabbeinu Yerucham would say it is as follows. You have one in Sefer Devarim, which is in Re'eh, which makes no mention about the Omer itself, but it makes mention of what? Mehachel chermesh bakama, from the time when the grain starts growing. So that is a reference to what do? We bring a Korban HaOmer because it's an agricultural Korban. If you take a look at Parshas Emor, it says, Usfartem lochem imocharat HaShabbat, miyom haviachem et Omer hatanufa. From the day that you bring the Korban HaOmer, Sheva Shabbatot Timimot Tihiyena. Sof Pasuk. That's the Pasuk ends after it says 7 weeks.
It's not the end of the...
It's the end of the Pasuk.
It's not the end of the Torah.
One second. Rega. Ad mimocharat HaShabbat HaShevi'it Tisperu Chamishim Yom. And then what? That's a different Korban. That's a different Korban. Bikraftem Mincha Chadasha L'Hashem is the Korban of the Shtei Halechem. So therefore, Rabbeinu Yerucham, look, you can learn the Psukim differently. I'll tell you how Rabbeinu Yerucham, Mistama, is understanding the Psukim. He's saying, why does the Pasuk stop in the middle? Right? It stops in the middle because it's two different things. Usfartem lachem imacharat hashod miyom aviachim et omer hatnufa sheva shabbatot miyot yana. Stop there, psik. Stop there. Yeah, that's one mitzvah. Ad imacharat hashabat hashit tisperu chamishim yom. The word tisperu is written twice. Usfartem and tisperu. It's redundant. So he holds that it's two separate mitzvot. I'm just trying to defend Rabbeinu Yerucham. Yachol liyot sheyesh derech acheret, right? For all of the other Rishonim. But I'm just saying that would explain Rabbeinu Yerucham. Okay?
No. Also, the Gemara that is in the end, it's not the pshat. He's saying that according to Elimar, I'm the second last time, Elimar, man yoma v'lo man shvoy, amar zecher b'mikdash hu. פירוש ספירת השבועות אינה אלא זכר במקדש. The opposite way around. Everyone said, count the days, because the days is Zechel HaMikdash.
Okay, we'll look. You'll show me the Gemara. Come, we have to go weiter. So far we've seen 3 Rishonim. We've seen the Rambam who says that Sfiras HaOmer is a mitzvah saseh deoraisa afilu bisman hazeh. We've seen Tosfos and the Rosh who hold that Sfiras HaOmer bisman hazeh is only the Rabbanon. And now we've seen Rabbeinu Yerucham who holds that it's a hybrid. The mitzvah of days, of counting days, is the oraisa. The mitzvah of counting weeks, rather, is the oraisa. And I'm sorry, the mitzvah of counting days is deoraisa, and the mitzvah of weeks is only derabanan because it's directly linked to the bringing of the korban ha'omer. So far, so good. I want to show you a fourth Rishon whose text is problematic, and that's the Sefer HaChinuch in source number 10. At the very end of the Chinuch, the language in the number of nuschos is aberrant, is different, it varies. This text is taken from the Bar Ilan CD, and but you'll see in just a second that not everyone has that nusach. The Chinuch writes, "V'noheges mitzvah sfiras ha'omer mideoraisa b'chol makom ba'zecharim." That the mitzvah of sfiras ha'omer is extant mideoraisa in all places for males, but only when bisman habayis sheyesham omer, only in temple times when there's a korban ha'omer, says the mitzvah, says the Sefer HaChinuch. If we stop there, according to the Sefer HaChinuch, is there a mitzvah saseh d'oraisa bisman hazeh to count? No, because it's only bisman the Beis HaMikdash, right? Okay. Umidirabanan b'chol makom va'afilu hayom she'en omer kareh. It's a rabbinic law, even when there's no korban ha'omer, even bisman hazeh, ba'avonoseinu, because of our sins. The last thing that he says, va'over al zeh, but if a person violates this law, v'lo safar yamim elu, and he did not count during these days, bitel aseh, he has nullified a positive commandment. The Minchas Chinuch puts in the words bisman habayis. I put those deliberately in italics because the older nuschos of Sefer HaChinuch do not have those words bisman habayis. The Minchas Chinuch puts those words in. So Samuel, maybe someone will give a shir on the Minchas Chinuch shir. Someone will have to give a shir on the Minchas Chinuch. This Minchas Chinuch over here really makes a lot of logical sense. It makes sense to say that you should put in the words bisman habayis in the Minchas Chinuch, because otherwise, or Sefer HaChinuch, otherwise he's directly contradicting himself. The first part he says that it's only derabanan bisman hazeh, and then at the end he says that if a person doesn't count, then he violates a positive commandment midioraisa, which would only make sense if he's referring to in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, but then of course it's a little bit redundant also.
He doesn't say people are saying the right, it's just the people are saying. It could be if the plus is the right, or the plus is the wrong, depends what time.
Okay. I know, but the language of bittul aseh is... You don't get malchus for an aseh, you just get malchus for a mitzvah los aseh. Okay, I'm going to get back to this Sefer HaChinuch momentarily. I want to show you one more thing before we get into the modern day poskim, which is the Siddur of Rabbi Yaakov Emden. And it's quoted a lot in a number of the other Sidurim and a number of the other Achronim. Rabbi Yaakov Emden's Girsa is, as for an example, on day 8, he says, Hayom Shiva Yamim LaOmer Shehem Shavua Echad. And you take out that last word LaOmer. That's in Sograyim, that's in parentheses. The Yavit Siddur puts the word LaOmer after days, but not after weeks. He says, Hayom Shiva Yamim LaOmer Shehem Shavua Echad. Hayom Shmona Yamim LaOmer Shehem Shavua Echad V'Yom Echad. And we don't do that. That's certainly not part of our nusach and our sidurim, neither for nusach Ashkenaz nor nusach Sfard. But the Yavit says as follows: if you got a magnifying glass, he writes, "Kain sarach loymar." This is the correct nusach. Lahasmich hayamim laomer. He says the yamim is what has to be adjacent to the word laomer. You know why? He says v'hu hamuskam mikol hadavkanim. He says that's the most correct for people who are precise, pedantic, punctilious in their language, right? If you want to be really exacting, you're a davkan, right? So therefore, this is the way you're supposed to do it. V'chein al pi ha'arizal, lo kemo she'osin hamon ha'am, shemadbikin hashavua la'omer she'eno nachon kelal bilashon. He says, not the way that the Hamonam, that the general populace does, that they attach the word la'omer after they count days and weeks. He says that's not correct. He doesn't say why, but he just says that that is incorrect. Why is it incorrect? Comes along.
We did this in benching.
What?
We did this in benching, right? We separated the rice and the Rabbanan.
Ooh, we do this in benching. Yes, very good. You were mechaven to something that Rabbi Yitzchak Ber says in his introduction to the Siddur Avodas Yisrael. We say, B'nei v'rachamov Yerushalayim, Amen. And then we go into the bracha of Revi'is, which is a bracha d'Rabbanan. Beautiful. In source 15, which is from the Siddur Avodas Yisrael, the Redelheim Siddur from 1901, Rabbi Yitzchak Ber, who compiled the Siddur, so the Siddur of Medaktikim, he brings down Rabbeinu Yerucham, and he quotes from the Siddur Yaivitz, he quotes from Yaakov Emden's Siddur, and he wants to argue as follows. He wants to argue that the reason why the Yaivitz and the Arizal feel that the word la'omer needs to be put after days and not after weeks is because, like exactly what Lazer was saying, is that the main mitzvah that we're doing, Bisman Hazeh, is counting days. Weeks is only Zecher L'Chorban. And therefore, the main mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer is after days, La'omer.
Which ties into Rabbeinu Yerucham.
Which is exactly like Rabbeinu Yerucham. So basically, he's arguing that the Yaivitz, the Rabbi Yaakov Emden, is paskening like Rabbeinu Yerucham, and so is the Arizal. Now, if that's the case, then let's take it one step further. Take a look at source number 13 for a moment, which is the Moedim Uzmanim of Rav Sternbach, Shlita. And he suggests the same concept, that according to the Arizal, and according to Rabbi Yaakov Emden, who say la'omer after days and not after weeks, that it's because it's a partial deorais and a partial derabbanan. So he says as follows. He says, Vihine, after he's gone through that discussion, he says, Vihine, minhag ha'ashkenazim lomar ba'omer v'chein das ha'gra zatzal. He says the minhag of Ashkenazim is to say ba'omer with the letter bet, and that's the opinion of the Vilna Gaon. V'chein hu minhag ha'teimanim lomar b'umra. And that's what Teimanim do as well. Teimanim do it, I feel a lot better, right? Because they have the most reliable Masorah, right? Aval ha'arizal omer la'omer. But the Ari said la'omer. V'chein na'agu lomar ha'chasidim v'hamitpalalim nusach Sfarad. And that is the minhag by Chasidim and by those who daven nusach Sfarad. Aval lefi ma shekasafti la'el b'shem ha'yayvitz, the Harizal safar kisfardim. He says, even though Rabbi Yitzchak Luria was an Ashkenazi, but he did a lot of things that were according to Minhag Sfard, like because he lived among Sfardim in Sfad. So therefore, he did a lot of minhagim that were Sephardic. He therefore says, the Omer la'omer acharei hayamim levad, and he said la'omer not after the days and weeks, but just after the days. He says, Im kein efshar demishum hachi kamer la'omer dekai al lehaba. He says that would make sense why he said la'omer. Because think about it for a second. Hayom shiv'a yamim la'omer shehem shavua echad. The word la'omer is a reference to what's coming after the word la'omer. Today is 7 days for the Omer, which is 7 weeks. That's, you put the comma after today is 7 days. La'omer shehem shavua echad. Right? In other words, it's for the Omer, the Korban HaOmer, which is 1 week for the Korban HaOmer. So the word la'omer, because it's being appended to another phrase that's coming after it, is going towards the next phrase of Shehem Shavua Echad, grammatically it makes sense to say La'omer. We're not going like the Taz now. We're just saying that the word La'omer, as you make it the beginning of a new phrase that has words that coming after it, La'omer, for the Omer that is to the Omer, which is 1 week, makes grammatically more sense. And that's why afterwards you say the weeks and the remainder days. Like for example, Hayom Shemona Yamim LaOmer Shehem Shavu Echad V'Yom Echad. V'lachein Shayach LaOmer. Aval LaAshkenazim Shomrim HaOmer B'Sof. But for Ashkenazim, and let's just put in, who don't go like Rabbeinu Yerucham, that we either paskin like the Rambam or like Tosfos, that it's either clearly a Doraisa or clearly a Derabbanan, and therefore we put the word Omer at the end of the phrase, Imkein Roy LaOmer Ba'omer, therefore you should say Ba'omer. Hol V'koi Al HaKol, because Ba'omer is, Rav Sternbach is saying grammatically, Ba'omer is when you're ending the phrase in the Omer, period. And therefore it makes more sense to use a base. Hol v'koy alakol v'chein muchach kiminag Ashkenazim, and he says, and I'll bring you a raya, a balabatish proof, how I know that ba'omer is correct, because mehad omrim lag ba'omer. We say lag ba'omer v'lo lag la'omer. U'laminag hasfardim, and according to the minhag of the Sfardim, afsha omrim la'omer b'shisha yamim rishonim lifnei hashavuot. He says, what are you going to say? The first 6 days, similar to the Taz's kasha, right? The first 6 days, la'omer doesn't make sense if the preposition lamed only makes sense if it's coming at the beginning of a phrase that has additional words. What about the first 6 days? Hayom shisha yamim la'omer. You stop there. So it should have been ba'omer during the first 6 days until you get to day 7. He says, mikol makom kavu anusach kein shelo lishanot. A low plug. They made everything la'omer, because the majority will have the phrase coming after the word omer, so they did all of the days. V'nir shenohagin lomar ba'omer, that those who have a minhag of saying ba'omer ein l'shanot mipnei da'at ha'arizah, they should not change their minhag just because you want to conform to the minhag of the mekubalim and the ari. You should not change your minhag. If your minhag is to say ba'omer, don't change it. The efshar dekava kein l'minhag hasfardim shenah kimotam. Because it's very possible that it's not a mystical, Kabbalistic reason why the Arizal said La'omer, but rather because his minhag was like minhag Sfard, which was like Rabbeinu Yerucham, as we've explained, which was to put the word Omer at the end of days as a precursor to the weeks. And there La'omer is the correct preposition grammatically. Umayti lazegam tam al pisod. And then afterwards he brings a reason al pisod. By the way, the reason al pisod that I saw brought down has to do with the gematria of Moshe Rabbeinu, because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is a Gilgul of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the word la'omer and not ba'omer adds up to the gematria of Moshe Rabbeinu. You have to do the math. I think it makes la'omer adds up to Moshe. Someone do the math for me. But if you do ba'omer, it doesn't add up to Moshe. But in any event, but he says the minhag Ashkenaz of Ba'omer is an ancient minhag, and you shouldn't change it. And we have many examples of the Ari, that even though he was an Ashkenazi himself and he didn't always abide by the minhag of the Sfardim, but nevertheless there are times when he did. But our minhag of Ba'omer is rooted in many, many early Rishonim, and therefore one should not change it. Does it work out at all, the gematria? We'll work it out later. Off by 1, that's okay. You can be off by 1. Off by 1 is okay. There's a miss Barcola, it's all right. Right? Does it work out? Moshe is Ba'omer?
Versus 346.
Okay, good enough. So that could be the mitzvah, the reason al pisod. But Rav Sternbach is arguing that it's really al pisod is the secondary reason, but the primary reason is that. Let's go on. Source number 14, Rav Hershel Schachter Shlita, Mipinine Harav. where he many times will cite the minhagim of Rav Soloveitchik, what he saw the Rav do. I know that many members of the Soloveitchik family have had a minhag to count both Ba-Omer and La-Omer. Toch Kedei Dibur, even. Rav Scheinberg, Zichron Livracha, was just nifter, used to say, Hayom Shiva Yamim, Shehem Shavua Echad, Ba-Omer, La-Omer. And Rav Soloveitchik, and someone told me that Rav Aaron Soloveitchik in Chicago, his minhag was to say, to count it completely, Hayom Shiva Yamim, Shehem Shavua Echad, Ba-Omer, Hayom Shiva Yamim, Shehem Shavua Echad, La-Omer. Two separate complete countings. And take a look at the Panini Harav. So first he says, he says, B'shulchan Aruch Arachaim Reish Siman Taf Pei Tesu Hu Beis HaNuschos Imesh LaOmer Ba'Omer O LaOmer Imesh Lomar Ba'Omer O LaOmer Ubi Pshuto Nireh Lefi HaNusach Shomrim Ba'Omer HaKavana Hi Shekol Meshach HaZman Hazeh Sheben Pesach LaShavuot Nikra Zman HaOmer. He basically is reiterating the Taz, and he says that if you say the word Ba'Omer, you mean to say the days of this period of time, which are called the days of the Omer. And V'hayom hu asara yamim bizman hazeh. He says, and that day, if you say Hayom asara yamim ba'omer, it's referring to 10 days within this time period. Ma'shenki lefi hanusach shomim belamid la'omer hakavanu hu yihi al karban minchata omer shayom hu asara yamim la'achar akrabat minchata omer. Whereas if you say la'omer, like the Taz says, it's 10 days after the bringing of the karban ha'omer. Valpi pshuto inyan zet tzarach lomer mitlatali b'machloket harishonim im sfirat ha'omer bizman hazeh de'oraita o de'rabanan. He says he'd like to suggest, even though it says in the parentheses it's not mukhrach this way, but I'd like to suggest that whether you say ba'omer or la'omer is dependent upon the machlokas between the Rambam and the Tosfos whether sfiras ha'omer bizman hazeh is de'oraisa or de'rabanan. If you hold that the mitzvah bisman hazeh is only midirabanan, ha'ikar hi shemidiaraisa hamechayev lasfira hu akravet mincha ta'omer. Very straightforward. What is the thing that obligates me to count sfira? It's the bringing of the karban, and that's why bisman hazeh that I cannot bring the karban. I only have a mitzvah derabanan, and therefore umemela yesh lispor la'omer belamid. And therefore, if you're a Tosafist, if you paskin like the Russian Tosfos, you should say la'omer. But if you hold like the Rambam that it's the oraisa bisman hazeh, as ein la mitzvah sasfira kesher im korban homer, then there's no connection between the korban homer and the counting, and it's basically the days of the omer, not the korban haomer. And therefore, but it's the days between Pesach and Shavuos that we have to count. And therefore it makes more sense to count with the letter Bet, because we're referring to the days of during this period, not the Korban Homer at all. There's no reference to the Korban Homer. He says, our minhag is la'achar gemar hasfira. What do we say in our Sidurim after we count? We say, Yehi ratzon sheyibana beis hamikdash b'mehera v'yameinu. We say, may it be your will, Hashem, that the temple be rebuilt speedily in our days. Ki sfiras ha'omer bizman hazeh ach derabanan. He says, because based on Tosfos, we hold that sfiras ha'omer, not like the Rambam, we hold that sfiras ha'omer bizman hazeh is only derabanan. V'chesheyibana beis hamikdash tachzor ha'mitzvah lios de'oraisa. Like the Levush had said. Remember, we saw this in the Levush. That's the whole reason why we say Yehi Ratzon Sheyibana Beis Hamikdash. That where we're at Shetachzor, right? Whatever the language that Sheyibana Beis Hamikdash B'mehera B'yameinu. Why are we asking Hashem to restore the avoda after we count Sfira? Because we hold that it's really only the Rabbanan, and that we can't count properly Bisman Hazeh. And that's why we make reference to this right after we've counted. The Rabbeinu, the Rav Soloveitchik, Hayat Tamid Noheg Lispor Pa'amayim. He always counted twice. B'chedei latzeit yadei shtei nuschot. In order to be able to fulfill the two nuschos, v'hayamedaktek shu shtei hasfiros keseder hazeh. and he was always medakdek that he would count it as follows, in this order. Shemitchila yomar ba'omer. First he would say, Hayom Shiva Yamim, Shehem Shavua Echad Ba'omer, which is what Ashehu Nusach Hamatim L'das HaSoivim D'Sfir B'Zman Hazeh Deoraisa Canal, which would be the Deoraisa Dika way of counting. V'rak Achar Kach Lomar La'omer, Ashehu Nusach Hamatim L'das HaSoivim D'Sfir B'Zman Hazeh Eno Ela D'Rabanan. And then he would say, Hayom Shiva Yamim, Shehem Shavua Echad La'omer. Because that would be the nusach that makes sense more according to the Rabbanan. And then right afterwards that he counted the nusach of La Omer, which is mat'im. If you hold that it's only the Rabbanan bisman hazeh, then he would say the Yehi Ratzon sheyibana beis hamikdash. Why? Because if he would have started with the nusach of La Omer first, and then he would have said Ba Omer second, right? Then it wouldn't make sense to say the Yehi Ratzon Shetachzor. I remember what the said. That what? Right? Then why are you saying that if you're saying Ba'omer? It's almost like a Tarti Desasri. If you're saying Ba'omer, then you shouldn't say the Yehi Ratzon. Because if you're saying Ba'omer and you hold therefore that it's a Deoraisa, then the Yehi Ratzon is out of place. Yeah.
By that extension, you should be, if you're open early before it's dark, that would also be a problem.
The only problem is that with that argument you'd be changing every night.
Right.
That you wouldn't, but it wouldn't be appropriate to do that.
It would be the same type, same idea. It's a type of design.
So I'm not so sure that if you count by allowing you to count early, maybe it's because we're being somech on multiple sveikos, maybe like a svek sveika that we're being somech on. That even if it's not yet Vaday Laila, you still have a right to begin counting even during the day, because there's some poskim who say that even if it's not yet Vaday Laila, you're still allowed to count Sfiras HaOmer. So I'm not so sure. We'd have to delve into that a little bit deeper to see if we're relying on additional Sveikos to allow us to count, not just because of that Sfiras HaOmer is only D'Rabbanan. I'm not really sure. Yes, Al.
The argument between the Rishonim, I don't remember who said what, if this is all of this is one mitzvah or it's every day it's mitzvah. This is not connected to this question of Omer and Omer?
Apparently not. That's a different issue. That's a different issue, whether it's the Balamor or yeah.
If it's Omer, every day it's mitzvah. If it's Omer, all of this period of time it's one.
That's one way of looking at it, but that's not. I didn't find that in all of my research, but it could be that's another way of explaining the machlokes. There could be other ways of looking at it as well. I just want to finish off with one last thing, and that was from a tshuva from Rav Menashe Klein Zichrono Livracha from the Mishnah Halachos, which is in source number 12. And just to go back to that very obscure Sefer HaChinuch where the language is difficult, I told you I would come back to that. And he says, we'll just do the first paragraph and the fourth paragraph very quickly. He said, Kosav HaChinuch mitzvah shin vav. This is in the Mishnah Halachos Chelak Vav Siman Kuf Gimel. He writes, Kosav HaChinuch mitzvah shin vav v'noheges mitzvah zu misafiras ha'omer midyaraisa b'chol makom. This mitzvah is extant midioraisa in all places, right? But only bisman habayis, only when there's a temple standing. Sheyesh omer sham karev, where there's a carbon homer brought. We don't have that in our nusach. Ve'ata ba'abanosenu she'enu beis hamikdash v'lo mizbeach monines hayamim v'hashvuos v'over monim anu hayamim v'hashvuos. Nowadays, in our sins, that we don't have a temple and we don't have an altar, we count days and weeks. V'over al zeh v'lo safar yamim elu bitel aseh. And if a person violates this and doesn't count these days, he's mevatel a mitzvahs aseh. Ad kan l'shona. So Rav Klein did not have in his version of the Sefer HaChinuch the words Bizman Habayit at the end. As I mentioned to you that some nuschos, the earlier printings of the Sefer HaChinuch do not have those words. Ba'aloshon tzarech birur she'ischol v'noheges mitzvah zu midioraisa b'zman hamikdash ve'ata ba'avonoseinu mashma d'sfir le b'zman hazeh derabanan. So for the first part is mashma that it's only a derabanan b'zman hazeh, but then v'siyim va'over b'talasemu for d'sfir le d'gam b'zman hazeh dioraisa v'nimsa dvar seisra minei ubei. So he asked this question. He says the chinuch is a stira minei ubei. The first part says derabanan, and then he says it's dioraisa. It's a stira minei ubei. If you skip down to the fourth paragraph, where he says, Omnam da'as hatur. Remember our Rebbe Vitur had said that the correct girsa is not to add the word Omer at all. You just say, I hold that tonight is Hayom Shiva Yamim Shehem Shavua Echad, period. Hayom Shmona Yamim Shehem Shavua Echad, Hayom Echad, period. No La Omer, no Ba Omer. So Rav Menashe Klein says as follows. He says, Omnam das hatur kinir shalol omar lo ba'omer v'lo la'omer. V'chenir ksas rishonim. He says a number of rishonim hold this way. V'nir d'zehu das hachinuch. That's the way the Sefer HaChinuch held. Shalol omar ba'omer o la'omer. He didn't say either. Svirale d'teravayu mashma shanu sofrim hayomim ha'ilu l'sfiras ha'korban ba'achshav ein lanu korban. He says the reason is because whether you say La Omer or Ba Omer, not like the Taz had suggested, not like Rav Shachter had suggested, but rather whether you say La Omer or Ba Omer, they both are referring to the Korban HaOmer, Ubeis HaMikdash, V'lochein ein lahaskir ha'akrovas ha'korban vein lispor rak hayomim, V'lo sifru La Omer kolomar, Da'asfira koi La Omer ela bisman habayis. He says you should not append the word Omer at all to the bracha that you make because it's not appropriate bisman hazeh when we cannot bring the korban ha'omer. Aval ata ba'avanosenu so from hayomim v'hashvuos v'gam heim de'oraisa. He says a big chiddush. He says that in the times of the temple, the counting was in some way conjoined with the bringing of the korban ha'omer. But nowadays, where we don't bring a korban ha'omer, there's still a mitzvah of counting, just that it's not related anymore to the bringing of the korban ha'omer. Aval ein so from osim leminyan ha'omer, ela so from stam yomim u'shvus keven deleka korban ha'omer, ein lahazir ha'krovas ha'omer klal, aval pashat degam bizman hazeh ikar hasfir hu de'araisa, ela de lo tzarech lahazkir la'omer u'chenal. So he says a huge chiddush. He says that there's two mitzvahs of Sfiras ha'omer. There's the mitzvah of Sfiras ha'omer, which is linked directly to the korban ha'omer. In other words, in temple times, according to the Sefer HaChinuch, you would say the word La Omer or Ba Omer, and you would say Hayom Shiva Yamim Shehem Shavua Echad La Omer. That is to say, I am counting 7 days, which is 1 week from the time that we brought the korban ha'omer. And that is a mitzvah d'oraisa that only applies in the temple times. Nowadays, there is no longer a mitzvah to link your Sfiras HaOmer to the bringing of the korban HaOmer, but there's still a mitzvah, saseh deoraisa, of Sfiras HaOmer, but a sphere that is not linked anymore to the korban HaOmer. And therefore the Sefer HaChinuch is of the opinion that today there's a mitzvah saseh deoraisa, just as a different mitzvah saseh deoraisa, a mitzvah saseh deoraisa of counting that is not linked at all to the korban HaOmer. I just want to review, and then with this we will finish. We saw 4 different opinions, at least potentially 4 different opinions in the Rishon. We saw the opinion of the Rambam, who says that Sfiras HaOmer Bizman Hazeh is Deoraisa, and it makes no difference whether there's a korban ha'omer or not. So the opinion of Tosfos, who says that Sfiras HaOmer Bizman Hazeh is only Derabanan, because you don't have a korban ha'omer. We saw the opinion of Rabbi Yerucham, who holds that there are 2 mitzvahs of Sfiras HaOmer. There's the mitzvah of Shavuos, which is directly linked to the korban ha'omer, and the mitzvah of Yamim, which is not linked to the korban ha'omer. So therefore we have a mitzvah d'oraisa bizman hazeh of counting days, and we only do zecher l'churban d'rabanan of counting weeks. And finally we have this position of the chinuch, which according to one opinion of how to interpret the chinuch, which is Rav Menashe Klein, he says there's a mitzvah to say d'oraisa of counting sfira, but it's a different mitzvah d'oraisa. In temple times, the mitzvah d'oraisa of counting sfira was directly linked to the korban ha'omer, in which there was an obligation to mention the korban ha'omer. And bizman hazeh, there's still a mitzvah d'oraisa of counting sfira, but it's no longer linked to the korban ha'omer, and therefore it would be inappropriate to say the word la omer or ba omer. Clearly, it doesn't seem like we paskin that way. This last opinion of the chinuch, if that's the correct interpretation of the chinuch, we wouldn't we'd have to put that aside and say that's a das yachid that no one subscribes to. And the question therefore becomes, do we say ba-omer or la-omer? And if we say la-omer, where do we insert the word la-omer? If we go like Rabbeinu Yerucham and like the Siddur of Rabbi Yaakov Emden, we would stick la-omer after we count days because that's the mitzvah deoraisa. And then the last part of it, which is Shehem Shavu Echad V'Yom Echad, is only Zecher L'Mikdash, and therefore we don't, it's sort of like very ancillary, it does not connect it at all to the main part of the bracha, to the main part of the formula. If, however, you put the word Omer at the end, then according to Rav Sternbach, it is suggested that La-Omer is not even the appropriate statement, not the appropriate preposition, because La-Omer is only appropriate if it's going in the middle of the sentence that is followed by a phrase, and Ba-Omer would be the appropriate preposition if it's coming at the end of a sentence. Now, not everyone agrees to that. Rav Hershel Schachter is of the opinion, quoting the Rav, that Ba-Omer or La-Omer both go at the end, and they're both appropriate, but Ba-Omer, like the Taz says, is a reference to the Yemei HaOmer, and La-Omer is a reference to the Karban HaOmer, and therefore it's totally in the Machlokas Rishonim whether Sfiras Omer Bizman Hazeh is Deoraisa or Deorabanan. If it's Deoraisa, then the mitzvah, then the correct girsa is Ba-Omer, because you're accentuating that our counting is because of the days in which we find ourselves not having anything to do with the Karban. If, however, you hold that Bizman is that's only Derabbanan because it's linked to the Karban Omer, then you say La-Omer because you're making reference to the Karban Omer innately and directly within the formula that you're saying. And therefore it makes sense if you say La-Omer to say because you're acknowledging by saying La-Omer that we can't do the mitzvah properly. We find some people who say, some medaktikim who say Ba-Omer and La-Omer, and basically we have a whole big discussion about what the proper counting is, but that seems to be the bottom line. So I can only tell you, Rabbi, say I seem to always find myself going like the Gra. That's the way I was brought up in yeshiva. So I say Ba-Omer. But you see this basis to say, tremendous basis to say La-Omer, tremendous basis to say Ba-Omer, tremendous basis to say Ba-Omer and La-Omer. So a person should do what his minhag is.